Today we're going to be looking at synthetic winch rope attachment to your winch drum, and we're going to be testing this fine product here from BubbaRope, and we'll see how well it holds up. Now this is a huge problem with synthetic rope on winch drums. How do you keep them secured to there, and how do you keep them from pulling off while you're winching hard? Now I know people are going to say blah blah blah, you shouldn't winch down past your last row of line or whatever. Total BS. If you use synthetic rope on a winch on heavy pulls consistently, regularly, you're gonna break it free from its mount. Just how it is. And I'll show you what happened to ours. However, if you want to spend big bucks, there's a solution. You could buy a Warn Zeon winch, which they basically resolved that issue by running the winch rope through the center of the winch drum, meaning that it could never really break free. It's a really brilliant design. However, you pay the money for it. For those of us who didn't, which I have owned their winches before, we have to deal with this. So let's take a look at what happened to our winch first, and then we'll see about how to attach this guy, and then we'll find out how it works over some testing. Oh my gosh! The rope just pulled straight out of our winch. Okay, this is not that surprising, it's really common. What these winches do, and if you want to get close up here, is they actually have a little attachment here on the inside of the drum. There's a little screw, oh, that might be it. There's a little screw set, ours got sheared off, that basically they have a little lug on the end of the winch rope, and then that lug attaches to the outside of the drum on the winch. Now, the problem with that is, if you do winch it down at the ends of the last run of line, it's gonna put a lot of tension on it. It can pull it free. That's not what happened to us. The other problem is that when you're winching at an angle, your winch's rope is coming into your feeding in at a real severe angle. And what it does is, in essence, it cuts itself on the lug. So basically what it did is it cut our line off. Thankfully, there was enough other wraps on it to where it held itself. You can see it got really mashed in there. Anyways, we can't put it and won't put it back the same way because it obviously sheared it off there. So we're gonna take a look at this BubbaRope attachment, how it works. Well, before we spool up the rope, it was rather smashed down and flattened in quite a lot of sections, and we're basically just working it free again and getting it back into rope shape again before we put it back on the winch. Anytime you do some really hard pulls and get the winch rope flattened out, it's not a bad idea to just work it back and then get back in shape, you know, before you put it back in. You also clean it out and wash it out at the same time. So this is called the grabber from BubbaRope, and what it is basically just a piece of nylon with two different holes in the end of it and a piece of 3M tape on the back of it. What's going to happen is it's going to get stuck on the winch drum on the inside with the 3M tape, and that's just going to kind of hold it in place while we run the rope through it. There it is, stuck on the winch, and then what we're going to do is basically run the rope through it and then wind it on, and so it's going to start in this loop here, and the tail end is going to go through this loop right at the end. Just stick the rope through the drum and find out about how far it is around the drum for one rope rotation, which turns out is right about this length. So if we need 5 lengths of that, we can bend it over like that. There's 2 wraps around it. There's 3 wraps around it, 4 wraps, and 5 wraps right there. So that's going to be the point where we're going to pull the winch rope into, and I'm going to just mark it with a Sharpie so you can see that. What I did is to take some electrical tape, and we wrapped it around the end of the rope, and we left a little pull to help us pull it through that little hoop. So let's take a look at putting this into here. So get nice and close here. We're going to feed it down underneath the drum here, up around and we're gonna have to feed it through that inside hoop, which is gonna be a little hard to see, but you can see the tape just came out here. Let's see if I can pull it through here and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so hopefully you can see this. Basically, we got it finagled through that first loop, and there's a tail hanging here. We're gonna go ahead and pull it, the slack out, and we're gonna pull it to that mark we made on the winch rope, which will indicate our 5 wraps on the drum. This extra tail length is about 5 wraps on the drum. The main rope here comes underneath the drum and then goes through this first inside hoop of the winch grabber line. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna spool it up and then run the tail end, the last part of the winch rope, through this hoop right here. There's the 5 wraps. Now what we're gonna do is take this end and we're gonna run it into this hoop here, and then we'll go ahead and get snugged up. The tail end is poking through the second loop here, and what we'll do is just kind of work it to take all the slack back through this thing so we get it nice and tight. 5 wraps on the drum here, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of a tail section pulling through this hoop, getting these first wraps as tight as possible. And it's just gonna be hand done at this point. Once we put a load on the winch, it'll pull these loops tight. But basically the concept behind this design is the same as synthetic rope, where it's more or less a Chinese finger trap. As it pulls tighter, it holds tighter. And that's the whole concept with this really simple design. And so basically what we want to do is have those first wraps as tight as possible by hand, and then go ahead and put a load on it, and we'll show you, spooling up this winch rope here in a second. Now we're gonna get this winch rope spooled up. We've got is a tree down there with a tree strap on it with the rope attached to it. It's always easier with 2 people, because as you're spooling it in, you can have the driver basically turn the steering wheel back and forth to assist with having that rope lay down how you want. That's gonna help out a lot. And the other thing you can do is either winch uphill or ride the brakes. So go ahead and put on the emergency brake. That's what the first wrap on the drum should look like. It should be really nice and tight. All the wraps should be really close to each other. And then we'll go up to the second wrap around the drum, and the wrap should be very, very similar to this first one. And the whole idea here is to keep it tight enough to where when you're winching under load, the rope isn't gonna cut down under the lower layers of wrap on the drum. All right, start going a little driver. A little more. A little more driver. A little more driver. All right, straighten it. Thanks, babe.
You're welcome, honey.
It helps a lot to have an assistant. Basically, the whole time you're just calling left, right, straight, to help spool it up. Now, this is what it should look like with the rope all spooled up nice and tight, all the wraps on there. Now, most people, after they use a winch, they hand spool it back on, which after you use it, sure, that's fine. But before you're gonna use a heavy load on your line, you really need to spool it under tension. So really, after you're done with the trip, the proper thing to do is to pull out all the line and rewrap it on the drum. Make sure all those wraps are nice and tight all the way up to the end. That way, it'll, one, be ready for the next time you actually need it, and it might be functional for you. The second thing with winches that people fail to think or realize is that winches do not work well when they're not used. Meaning, if you want something that's gonna work when you're out on the trail or out exploring, you need to work that sucker. You know, the better thing to do is to run it at least every month, if not before, whether it's just spooling it out and respooling it, or, you know, doing some sort of recovery with it, because all the gears and lubrication and all that fun stuff in the winch, as well as the solenoids, all that stuff needs to be used. So just remember that with your winch. Maintenance is a key factor, and we'll let you know how this attachment goes with our winch as we pull it with some heavy loads. But I love the simplicity of the design, and it's the right concept, so I think it'll work great with this thing. And if you have a synthetic winch rope on your winch, you might consider something like this. It'll help you keep it attached under heavy loads and not break free. And hopefully this was helpful. If it was, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, post it below. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.